everybody. Welcome again to another episode of the Victor Cho podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in or watching, depending on which format you're using. I am incredibly excited to have this conversation today with Nirav Desai, just because I'm a huge geek, and in the spectrum of people that have worked on, I don't want to call your stuff geeky stuff, but it's so cool. It's the coolest stuff. Nirav has a very long history in technology. He was chief technologist at Booz Allen Hamilton for well over a decade. He has worked in VR, AR, spatial computing. He is an assistant professor at the University of Washington, working on immersive tech and next-gen human-machine interfaces. He's been a CEO, a company called Moonbeam, working on data science and AI, and it doesn't stop. And most recently, he has taken the role of Director of Innovation, Acceleration, and Strategy at HP, where he's responsible for driving pretty much next-gen tech for a massive technology business. So Nirav, thanks again so much for taking the time to join us today.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. So maybe we'll start with one of the coolest ones, because it's like so sci-fi and out there that a part of me was like, this isn't even possible, but it seems like it's coming, which is this idea of kind of neural linking technology and kind of brain computing interfaces. So my understanding is at your job at the UW, you really focus on this area. So I would just love to hear your perspectives on where are we? Are we in the realm of sci-fi yet? Like what is state of the world and what's coming in terms of these interfaces?
Yeah, so not just at UW, but across a lot of what I look at this. I like to call this technology area both spatial and experiential technology, and the reason is that it's not when we think of VR, for example, we normally just think of a headset, right? And that's true. That's one of the five senses that you're virtualizing, right? It's vision, but it includes spatial audio, right? It includes things like not new technology. It's been around. Virtual smell. Right, that's been around.
Wait, okay, we'll have to delve into that one.
There are technologies that will you could programmatically create smell to enhance an experience. But what I find one of the most promising, but still a bit out there, is neuromorphic computing or brain-computer interfaces.
Yeah.
And some of it's pretty far out there. Right. Some of it is not. Right.
Yeah.
Worked with in the past. Emotive. They have a brain-computer interface headset. I have a head that's made for brain-computer interfaces. Hair gets in the way, and it's really useful for things like detecting attention and focus.
Interesting.
I often use a meditation aid called Muse. And it helped you provide metrics on how centered you are when you're meditating.
Are they measuring macro patterns, kind of macro brain?
Alpha and beta waves, for the most part. They're looking at blood pressure as well.
Okay.
And there are so many sensors available, right? So there are technologies that don't require any neural sensing, that just look at vision, where your eyes are looking.
Interesting.
To get similar effects. They're the company that I was quite excited about, called Mudra, which is a watch band that you get for an Apple Watch. And it basically is sensing the nerves here on your wrist and using that as an input into all types of interfaces. So you can actually use a Mudra band with no device to act as a mouse, for example.
And it's pulling neural signals that are going through your neural pathways in your wrist?
Correct.
That is crazy.
So when I say brain-computer interface, I'm not just talking about neural headsets. I'm talking about even watch bands, right? So I say that with a sense that there are technologies that are available today on the market. There are technologies that are being researched that will not be available for a long time. And when thinking about how one is to implement spatial or experiential technology, you want to think through how ready that technology is for market. Is the use case that you're intending it for to match the readiness of technology? And is there enough of a demand signal in the way people are used to using technology that allows for an easy adoption curve?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I could probably get a little bit more detail into that if you.
No, it's super. I don't know. I don't know if you ever saw this bad movie back in the '80s called Firefox with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
So he flew this like supersonic military jet, but it was like he basically had a mind control
Yep.
version. Which my understanding is that the military is getting to the point where they can do some basic flight manipulation with these devices.
I can't speak to the level of the current technology there,
Yeah.
but they've been involved in it.
But I think one question I'd have is like, to me, that there's a precision problem, which is like at the highest level of if you're just getting like brain signal read or pattern, that's probably one of the easiest. But then the more specific you get down to, I want my fighter jet to make a
Yeah.
left bank roll at 15 degrees. Like that feels like just an incredibly specific set of pathways. And so I'm curious, will we get to the point where you will be able to have very discrete thoughts that are picked up by and processed by a computer or AI?
So there are two challenges with that. One is a lot of the sensing we're doing is at the surface level, right? Architecture of the human brain
Mm-hmm.
is it's spatial, right? It's depth, has depth. Um, so where the sensors are might not be deep enough necessarily to get at the level of precision you need.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of noise, right? And so I think at the level that you're talking about, I'm not saying that won't be possible,
Yeah.
but it's extremely a hard problem. And the more sensors you add, the more noise.
Yeah.
And disambiguating and getting a signal out of that noise is a difficult challenge. Right now, we're really good at getting things like attention and focus.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
We're far, far away from getting things like what color are you thinking?
Yeah. Are we anywhere close to being able to do the reverse? Meaning, and like we can pull out potential signal or intent. Is there any ability to push back in at this stage, or still is that way down the path?
I mean, there's definitely people researching that. I haven't seen anything that really um, gets me excited on that front as much.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also would want to think through what the use cases that we're trying to address there.
Yeah. No, that could go to some dark places.
Yeah.
Just, so is it safe to say you're not going to be putting a chip in your brain anytime soon?
I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, ditto on that front. Let's segue a little bit to one of my favorites is kind of VR AR.
Yeah.
So I was an early adopter of the HTC Vive. This was one of the first big. This was the VR systems that had these like scanners. You had to put them in the corner of your ear. It was like a huge to do. Like, I want to say that was 10 plus years ago now. It might even be longer.
Yeah, about 2016 or so.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one of those moments where like I only have a handful of these technology moments in my life where it's like, oh my God, like everything's going to change. Right. The first time like I saw the internet, I was like, yep, that was one. The first time I got AR VR was one. And I've been kind of disappointed in the uptake and the progression because it's evolved and we've gotten rid of the laser sensors, but it's not mass adoption yet, I don't think.
Right.
And I'd be curious as you track this this industry, like, why not from your perspective? And is it inevitable and it's just waiting on some key tech breakthroughs? Like,
So I think there's been a I have a lot of opinions about the path that the VR industry has taken this last 10 years. I think there's been a mismatch in the model of how we think about it. And so when I think about technology futurism, right, I like to look at historical models of innovation, and to a certain degree, we applied a software model to a hardware based innovation,
Interesting.
and that becomes really challenging, right? The pace at which we went for say from a mainframe to a PC
Mm-hmm.
was pretty slow. I think people were no one like it was quite an audacious claim when Bill Gates said his mission was to get a desktop on every
Yeah.
PC on every desktop in the world, right?
Yeah.
There is a certain assumption that the industry had, which was if we make the technology cool enough, people are just going to start using it. But there was part of what unlocked and what Microsoft came upon, right, which was it's not only a hardware game. There needs to be an operating system. There needs to be software for PCs for it to take off.
Yeah.
And largely, I would say the VR space has been largely the big investments have been on the hardware side. So my question still is, where is the spatial operating system?
Yeah.
Now, I know Apple has introduced one,
Yep.
but when I think about functions I need to get work done, issue two is the tech world is largely living in a post iPhone world
Mm-hmm.
where you expect consumer innovation to come first. Through the history of technology, it's never been the case, right? It's always been enterprise innovation that uncovers form factors, uncovered ways new technology can be used for productive work.
Yeah.
And then someone figures out how to consumerize it. Start in 2007 on, we've been in a state where the industry feels they could jump over the enterprise and go straight to consumer first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's worked in a mature marketplace like web apps or, phone technology.
Yep.
But what we forget is when the iPhone was released, it built on top of things like BlackBerry and Palm Pilot and all this other technology that were 10 years ahead before it.
Yeah.
We skipped over that in VR, right? So in 2016, certain select people, myself included, were drilling holes in their wall to get sensors to have a VR room.
Yeah.
Um,
I was so
whereas
silly that I predicted. I was like, "Oh, every house on the planet is going to have an empty room with padded walls because this is so compelling."
most enterprises would not make that investment, right? And when they did, what they got were a lot of headsets that were not configured to have multiple users using them, right? So when I walk in at a corporate environment, I helped build a corporate VR training team when I was at Booz Allen. One of the biggest challenges we faced over and over again was person X is wearing, John's wearing the headset now.
Yep.
In another hour, Jennifer's coming in to do the same training.
Yeah.
And I have to change all the configuration settings between these people because there's a simple thing like multi-user
Yeah.
did not come with these initial headsets.
Yeah.
Even right now, what single sign-on is still a challenge across applications. So when I say the spatial OS, what are the tools that are needed to make an enterprise-grade computing platform that actually helps me get work done?
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. And in that vein of just also kind of making it useful, I'm curious, like I've never used it for business purposes, right? My exploration was all just kind of gaming entertainment, but has there been a breakthrough must-have VR use case, let's say in business, even on consumer? I'm hesitant to find other than a Beat Saber, which is amazing, but
Right.
I was
I would
10
say
years ago, right? I'm like, where are the compelling, the must-have, change your life in terms of either productivity or entertainment?
so. I think right now with the way where technology is at the moment, right, which is very solid, virtual reality-based experience, decent, and still, I'm pretty optimistic with what's coming up the next few years on the AR side.
Mhm.
But where we are right now is really solid VR that is amazingly effective for things like training. So that includes things like um, the military training, it's first responder training, it's medical training.
Yeah.
All of that, I think the technology is there, the hardware is there, the software layer of the operating system is still each company that does something interesting has to go back and has their own unique way of building certain things that
Yeah.
kind of should be standardized at right now.
Yeah.
So avatars and gestures and all of that is being built in one-off, and there's not a standard there. But yeah, I mean, think about things like uh, mastering radiological equipment and how to effectively do CAT scans is hard.
Yeah.
Right? It takes a lot of training to get radiological technicians to understand and perform effectively. That is something that could be virtualized right now, and there are several companies that are looking into that.
That's super. Reminds me, actually, there was a trade show where I saw probably one of the coolest. This was for the military. It was a medical simulation in VR, and there'd be literally a cadaver bleeding out. I mean, it was pretty graphic because it's VR. Right? And
Yeah.
yes, it's computer generated, but still. And then you had all the equipment, and it was basically putting them through rapid paced training of like, what device do I use? Where do I put it? Right? Where do I put a bandage? And I was like, that's an amazing use case because it's going to depressure that moment when you finally experience it.
Yep. And to a certain degree, you don't have to simulate everything, right? I think some people feel like the bar is, oh, well, I want to feel the pressure of, a patient bleeding out, or I want to get the tactile sensation of the bloodiness of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would help in certain ways. But a lot of problems can be avoided just by building the muscle memory of how much room I have to work in, where my tools are, and to do, grab that suture or grab that whatever tool it is without having to think about it, right?
Yeah.
Build that muscle memory to make it easy.
Yeah.
So
it's spot on. One of the apps that I promoted most, and I still do in that vein, is I assume these are still in the VR app stores. There's one which was literally just a blank stage, and you would get up on the stage, and then you would set a dial for how big of an audience do you want to be speaking to.
Oh, right. That's a great app.
And what is their emotional response to when you say something? And this was before AI. I forget the name, unfortunately, but
it's such a great app. Yeah.
I'm a confident public speaker, but still just being up in VR and walking the stage and like practicing your lines.
Yep.
And just like again, that.
Yep.
They get that physical, like, let me just desensitize you and make you comfortable to the environment.
Well, so actually, let me tell you an interesting story. And this is going back a few years, but it goes into, I think, some of the barriers to adoption is a few years ago, I was at a conference, HR and VR, right? It was a HR conference, technology for HR, fully done in VR. This was early pandemic. And what was interesting is I was speaking at it, and the simple thing of having your speaker's notes, right? There was no way to do it. Was not an easy thing to do. So my workaround at the time and where the platforms were is I published my speaker's notes to a website, and I had a browser virtually in front of me that I could see, but others couldn't see on that website. And that way I had my speaker's notes in the meeting. Because even with the proximity of it, my slides were behind me.
Yeah.
Right. So every time I wanted to refer to something in a slide, I'd have to turn around and look, right? We have this built into our web ecosystem, right? That hasn't been thought through all the way on the VR side.
Yep.
And those type of micro interactions are critical to adoption.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a great segue into AR though, because I'm like, well, that's a great AR use case. You could be having your goggles or your glasses and have your things on the side. Yep. And I know you're involved in both. For some reason, I haven't been a huge conceptual fan of AR just because of the size of the glasses, right? In terms of like just everyday use case. So I felt Google Glass was too early.
Yep.
But it's clear, right? At some point, the form factor will get down small enough.
At some point, AR and VR will become a single device. Yeah. I don't think we're too far off from that.
Oh, interesting.
It's the new Meta Ray-Bans are quite nice. That's a huge step towards it. But I would even say that even if we get glasses this size, which are impossible to think about it. That's still a long way off. Let's say we have that tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's still all sorts of other challenges we need to figure out. And I would like to have a little bit more thought in the industry around there because the hardware is going to get there. This is a big enough area that investments is continuing to go into that. I'd like to see more in thought around, a small anecdote. When you think about the transition from of the first GUIs, right? First time we started using mouse, that was something we had to learn how to use, right?
Yeah.
And early Windows versions of Windows had solitaire for that reason, so people could learn how to use the mouse.
Wait, was that the reason solitaire was?
That's the reason they gave. But the question, why do you have this game shipped with every? But it was a really effective way of teaching people how to use the mouse.
That's true. I would know people that would know that for sure.
The really smart thing about the mouse, and just think about this from a philosophical level, right? I can make a very small motion with a slight movement in my hand and cause amazing things to happen in my virtual world, right?
Yeah.
When we're thinking about the paradigm in VR or AR, we're often thinking about grand motions, right? Gesture-based control. I want to point like this and click.
Yeah.
Those are big motions to cause small actions, right? It's the reverse of what caused the mouse to be successful, which is a small action making big action. So what's really powerful, and I'd like to see more thought about how to incorporate this, like what Apple did with the eye tracking to predict what you're selecting on.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah.
Powerful, right? Because now I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Right. Or I don't have to make a huge motion. Better integration of AI and voice command so that I can say something like in a virtual meeting, hey, remember that slide we were talking about in the meeting that we had with Party X? And you and I are sitting there, but an AI is bringing up that slide.
Yeah.
And I can now say, yeah, okay, that's it. Because it has context awareness of the meeting going on.
Yep.
And it's bringing the right tool that we need at the time. Those types of innovations in a virtual or augmented reality experience is what's going to make it really powerful.
Yeah. No, I can't wait for my personal hot button is I'm terrible with names. I'm just terrible with this. So I'm waiting for the moment where I could have something where I could go into a meeting. It's like, oh yes, these are the names of all the people.
Bring in the LinkedIn profile and
the LinkedIn profile. That would, oh my God, that would.
Yeah. So Agentic AI combined with XR, is extremely powerful.
Yeah. That's how come, and maybe somebody is doing this, but how come everyone is trying to cram all the tech into the glasses versus let me just slave it to the supercomputer that I've got in my pocket and just have the glasses be effectively a pseudo smart display of a device, but have all of the to get it lighter weight here. Maybe someone's built this, but is anyone working on that hybrid kind of model?
So there's a interesting debate here, and this is now jumping into another philosophical area, and it's that's there's this pendulum that swings in computing between on-premise and remote computing, and right now we're on the extreme end of remote computing, right? Cloud's taken off; everyone sees the value in it.
Yep.
There's a lot going into edge intelligence, right? What kind of tools and capabilities do we need on my personal PC, on even some of the devices I have in my house, right? My router. How do I off-put compute onto that? And then what do I need to go to the cloud for? Because that latency is a huge problem. A lot of reason why they're putting so much on the glasses is if there's even a slight delay, that could cause nausea. Right?
Yes.
So you need compute to happen as close as possible to the display to prevent that biological response.
Yeah.
And so they're putting more and more on the device. But can we offset some of that onto a PC? Can we offset some of that onto a local router? and then only go to the cloud when we absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to stage that to make that work effectively.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Do you worry at all? Like on one hand, I'm torn because I'm like, wow, some of these in the world of AR, right? Having some of this functionality is great, but at the same time, we built a society that is so consumed with their devices that aren't piping into their retina. Like, I'm just trying to think, what happens to a conversation when you and I are chatting and there's this thing that you can't see that's like, sending me information or ads and I'm distracted. Like, do you worry at all about the humanity impact of some of these systems?
I do. And I think there's going to be like, this is, so I'm involved with an organization, the Virtual World Society. It was started by Tom Furness, considered the grandfather of AI, of VR, sorry.
Yeah.
He was early early in his career. He helped the Air Force begin their investment in virtual reality. The central premise of Virtual World Society is that we are the business model by which we built big data and cloud is not very helpful to the consumer, the user experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as we're at the dawn of this spatial computing revolution, let's rethink some of that and figure out how to do it right. Right, selling ad space in a virtual world should not be the business model.
Yeah.
For effective. I don't want to walk down the street full of people with virtual Times Square everywhere we go.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, do you want to buy that guy's outfit? Click here.
Right. I want something and we should think of business models to enable this.
Yeah.
That allow the right information at the time for what's relevant and I'm doing right now that actually help the user out.
Yeah. I love that.
And there's a lot of people thinking about this, right?
Yeah.
But if we don't think about this, we are going to go down that model.
Yeah.
And that's not a world I think that's going to be very healthy.
Yeah. No, I'm in the shared boat with you. I like your approach to that. And speaking of business model, I'm curious now that, now you're at a Fortune 500, probably Fortune 500 company still, I'm going to believe. But then you've seen everything, in your long consulting career, you've seen this arc of technologies and startups. And not that I worry, but it's interesting to me that people like, Microsoft, where I worked, of course, for a while, like has now kind of regained position as maybe one of the dominant technology companies. Like, what's the interplay between startups and these mega companies in your mind in terms of innovation, just given how much capital is being required, at least on the AI side, right, for some of these innovations? Like, do we become more concentrated in this new world, or?
So I think this might be a slightly controversial stance I have, but I think that yes, on the AI model side, there is only a few big players that are extremely well funded, that are figuring out, building, and kind of owning the ecosystem. I am not sure that's where the innovation is going to take place. That's going to drive the next wave. I think what I find truly amazing about LLMs is that almost any part of society has started finding value in them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always providing you the best information. To a certain degree, it's like a very confident, very smart first-year consultant who wants to tell you what they want what you want to hear. And hey, I love those first-year consultants from Ivy League schools that are just really eager are great.
Yeah.
Technology is going to get better. Things are going to get better. But I think the real value is I can start orchestrating these to help me get more in what I want to get done, right? Whether you're a technologist or a technologist to figure out how to use this for vibe coding and doing more with fewer engineers. Doctors are figuring out how to use these to improve patient care.
Yeah.
Bioscientists are figuring out how to do this for greater drug discovery or what have you, right?
Yeah.
Every field, my daughter who's in high school, they're figuring out how to use this to learn better or how to cheat or how to, there is amazing innovation about how to use AIs to get work done. And so the barrier to entry, because of these tools existing, has dramatically come down. And so that centralization of compute might be a challenge, and is something we should think about. The decentralization and democratization of building very powerful and productive tools for actual lines of business really counters that to a large degree.
Yeah.
And I think we should start thinking about what are the new platforms that are going to exist? What are the new paradigms for creation? You know, when I was growing up, there were 3 major networks. Get a sense of how old I am. So if you wanted to be a TV producer, you had
Yeah.
a potential of 3 employers, right? Now, if you want to be a TV producer or a producer of content, just start doing it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
No, that's great.
These are
That's great.
whole new economies that were created by the technology. And I think we should start thinking about what new economies are going to be created um, as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's an optimistic answer, which I love to hear. And it feels right to me too,
Yeah.
right? If in a world where we untap, I always use this term intelligence as a service, right? When we really untap intelligence as a service to the society, yeah, innovation will happen at the process level and what you do with that. So the kind of the next level up in the chain.
Yeah.
I love that. 2 more questions for you as we wrap up. One, just and maybe you get this from the day to day of all the work you do, but how do you stay ahead of the technology change? It feels so aggressive and it's so fast. Whether it's AI or any of these technologies we've talked about. Do you do anything separate from, or is it just you do your day to day work and that's that's
I'd say it is getting harder and harder every year. And that's because there's, as I'm saying, there's so much innovation coming from all parts of the world. That is that's a challenge, right? I try to stay connected with the startup ecosystem,
Mhm.
mentoring startups, working with VCs, looking at what's next. Like, I'm very excited about what's going on in the quantum space right now. I'm very excited about what's going on in fusion energy space. Um, that's a little bit outside of my core area of expertise, but
Yeah.
it's going to affect all of this. So being aware of where the edge of technology is,
Mhm.
and then I have this belief that wisdom is the ability to make decisions without all information, and you do that by creating frameworks that you could
Yeah.
test, right?
Yeah.
And so whenever I'm in a new space, I try to build a framework that help me understand that space, and test whether that framework holds.
Yeah.
Because
No,
you're
that's
not
great.
going to have every aspect.
We're like brothers from a different world. I've been called by my teams like you are. They're like, Victor, you're the framework guy. Like you have a framework for everything. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah. How do you live your life without it?
the only way to
Uh,
understand stuff, right?
no, it makes life so much simpler. Love it. Final question. Has there been anything recently that has inspired you? It doesn't have to be tech related, but a
You
book,
know
a
what?
podcast, a piece of content, anything where you're like,
Yeah,
that's
so I
maybe
was
I should have
actually just this weekend. I was at the at the Jaipur Literary Festival, which took place in the Seattle version. I got an opportunity to hear from and meet William Dalrymple, who has this book called The Golden Road.
Hmm.
And we used the Silk Road as a model for understanding the world.
Yeah.
The Golden Road is his response to that, which is let's think about where role India played in history. What I appreciate about his take on the world is he's looking at historical models of innovation, and how knowledge spreads, and those fundamental patterns have not changed. The mediums change, but when there's a good idea in any part of the world, it gets out there, and there's mechanisms by which it gets out there. And so it was really interesting to hear a different paradigm than what I'm used to. Um, would recommend it just for a way to get a different look on the world.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. And a perfect way to wrap. Nirav, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Quick thanks on my end to C-Suite and John Largent and his kind of podcast team, Anurag, our producer, and my daughter, Izzy, who has recorded the music for this podcast. And she's a budding musician. So Thank you for that. In addition to running this podcast, I'm also the CEO of Emovid. In business today, it's impossible for anyone to tell what digital communication is real versus AI generated or modified. This is a huge issue that we have actually solved at Emovid. Emovid is the only guaranteed authentic asynchronous communication platform that has been built for business. If your business relies upon relationship and trust building, this is a must-have platform for you and your teams. Please check out emovid.com at emovid.com, or even better, if you can see it, scan the QR code and you'll get to see the product in action and even get a special podcast offer. Thank you again for listening.